The in-game Majungasaurus is a rather slow and lumbering beast that only aggroes on creatures that are very close to it, but all of that changes when it gets a whiff of blood. Majungasaurus can sniff out corpses as well as low health players and creatures, and this scent sends it into a bloodthirsty frenzy, increasing its movement speed to make tracking down its target that much easier. Once it is caught up to its next meal, it deals damage that increases as the prey's health lowers. Majungasaurus is a new cross-platform creature mod from Lapis Lazuli. You can find this majestic theropod in the jungles and grasslands, as well as on Carnivore Island, and they will rarely spawn in the dunes on Scorched Earth. But did this creature ever really exist? In 1896, in the Majunga province of northwestern Madagascar, a selection of fossilised teeth, a claw and some vertebrae were discovered beside the Betsiboka River by a French army officer. After inspection, these fossils were assigned to the Megalosaurus taxon, but this wasn't the Megalosaurus that we know and love in game. This taxon was what is known as a wastebasket taxon, and any organisms that looked like they might be related and didn't fit anywhere else were put here. They often ended up being a very strange collection of animals. This creature was named Megalosaurus crenatosimus, and then later it got moved to the Dryptosaurus genus. Over the next 100 years, numerous fragmentary remains were collected, and in 1955 a piece of jaw with teeth was discovered that changed how this creature was identified. The teeth matched the earlier specimens, but the curved jawbone was very different from both the Megalosaurus and the Dryptosaurus. Based on this discovery, a new genus was created, Majungasaurus, combining an older spelling of Majunga, the province where the creature was found, and the Greek word saurus, meaning lizard. So the Majungasaurus is based on a real dinosaur. But what was this prehistoric creature like, and how does it compare to the game version? Majungasaurus lived in what is now modern-day Madagascar, 70 to 66 million years ago during a period known as the Late Cretaceous. Like other members of the Abelisauridae family that it belonged to, the Majungasaurus was a bipedal predator, with a short snout, very short forearms, and longer stocky hind legs, just like they are in-game. Their bodies would have looked very similar to other members of the Abelisauridae family, such as the Carnotaurus. Majungasaurus had some very distinct features that distinguished it from its relatives though. Their skulls were wider, they had a rough thickened bone on the top of their snouts, and a single rounded horn on the roof of its skull. The skull of large individuals would have been 60 to 70 centimetres or 24 to 28 inches long. The inside of the frontal horn was a hollow cavity, and this would have weakened the structure, making it unsuitable for direct physical combat. Because of this, researchers assume that it was used for display purposes. Majungasaurus would have been a similar size to the Carnotaurus, being between 5.6 to 7 metres or 18 to 23 feet long, and they likely weigh between 750 and 1,100 kilograms. The in-game version has a taste for the dead and dying, and although weakened prey would have made an easier hunt, there are no indicators in the skeleton that suggest that it was a scavenging specialist. Their skulls are unique compared to other theropods, indicating that it had different predatory habits. Most theropods have a long, low skull with a narrow width, which is well adapted to withstand the vertical stress of a powerful bite. They were not as good at withstanding twisting motions, but they could deliver many bites in order to subdue their prey. The Majungasaurus, on the other hand, had a skull that was taller, wider and shorter, and this would have enabled them to use a feeding strategy similar to modern felids: bite once and hold on. Their skeletal structure supported this, with robust neck vertebrae and interlocking ribs. These physical adaptations would have enabled the Majungasaurus to hold its head steady despite the struggles of its prey. They were the largest predator in their environment, and the only known large herbivore that has been found in Madagascar from the same time period is a sauropod called Repetosaurus. Scientists have suggested that Majungasaurus may have been a specialised sauropod hunter. Although Repetosaurus may have been the prey of choice, there is also evidence that Majungasaurus hunted each other. Numerous Majungasaurus bones have been discovered bearing identical tooth marks to those found on sauropod bones in the same area. We can't prove whether Majungasaurus actively hunted their own species, or whether they were simply scavenging carcasses, but creatures such as the Komodo monitors will sometimes kill each other when competing for access to a carcass, and then cannibalise the remains of their rivals, so it's not unheard of behaviour. In-game, you'll find Majungasaurus roaming the jungles and grasslands, but the environment their prehistoric ancestors inhabited was a little different. Madagascar was already an island in the late Cretaceous, but it was positioned at a more southerly latitude than it is today. The prevailing climate at the time was semi-arid, and the area that the Majungasaurus called home would have been coastal floodplains intersected by sandy river channels. As similar areas in game are normally considered the easy spawn areas, I'm pretty pleased this dino spawns elsewhere. It isn't known what exactly caused Majungasaurus to go extinct. Its fossil records end around the time of the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, a large mass extinction caused by an asteroid impact that wiped out about 3/4 of all living species. But there are also some theories that suggest that Majungasaurus may have been struggling before this. Being the apex predator on a relatively small landmass presents its own challenges, primarily regarding the availability of food and a diversity of mates. It has been suggested that the cannibalistic traits may have been a result of food scarcity, and inbreeding may have weakened this dinosaur's genetic lines, making them more susceptible to genetic issues and disease. The Majungasaurus brings a really innovative mechanic to ARK, enabling you to track creatures and players that have taken damage and are on the run. Their model is faithful to their real-life ancestor, and there is also a Majungacorn variant. What more could you want? The Laelaps, a creature mod created by Eish Krooked, is a fearsome force to be reckoned with. Combining the ability to track prey with deadly precision and being able to strike its prey with a devastating force, it makes the perfect survival companion. But is this dinosaur based on reality, or is it a work of fiction? Let's find out. The research of prehistoric animals may appear to be a rather slow and sedate process, with lots of careful digging and cleaning followed by time-consuming studying and recording. But this has not always been the case, and the late 1800s were a pretty wild time. Known as the Bone Wars or the Great Dinosaur Rush, it was a period of intense and ruthlessly competitive fossil hunting, spearheaded by an intense rivalry between two men, Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh. From bribery and theft to the destruction of bones, almost nothing was off limits as they vied to ruin each other's reputations and cut off funding. It was during this time that Cope received news of a fascinating discovery that had been made by workers from the West Jersey Mile Company who had been working in a quarry near Barnesboro, New Jersey. In August 1866, Cope arrived at the site and declared the fossil to be the finest discovery I have made yet, which is quite the claim considering he didn't actually find it. The skeleton in question was surprisingly complete and a unique find in North America at that time. The fossil was taken to the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia to be studied, and it was determined to be a brand new genus and species of dinosaur. Cope named his discovery Laelaps aquilungueus. Laelaps is derived from the Greek word hurricane or storm wind, and is also the name of a dog from Greek mythology who never failed to catch what it hunted. However, this genus was actually already occupied by a genus of common parasitic mites. In 1877, Cope's rival, Othniel Charles Marsh, took it upon himself to rename the dinosaur Dryptosaurus, which means slashing reptile. And quite predictably, Cope refused to use that name, maintaining that Laelaps was valid for years after. But amidst the turmoil and the enormous egos, Dryptosaurus aquilungueus was an incredibly important discovery, being one of the first theropod dinosaurs ever known to science. Dryptosaurus was a Eutyrannosaurian theropod dinosaur that lived around 67.6 million years ago during the late Cretaceous period on the island continent of Appalachia. Theropods are a clade of dinosaurs characterised by hollow bones and 3 toes and claws on each limb. The Eutyrannosaurian part of their description refers to the superfamily that they belong to, and by the late Cretaceous, this family group were the dominant large predators in the northern hemisphere. Dryptosaurus is only known from fragmentary remains, but these are enough to indicate that they were not built like their tyrannosaurid relatives. It would have been lean and somewhat flattened from the sides. Their skulls were more laterally flattened, and they had thin-bladed teeth instead of the stout armor-piercing teeth of their relatives. Their arms were relatively long compared to other members of their family, and their hands were relatively large too. More recent research from 2011 has suggested that they may have only had 2 functioning digits on their hands rather than the typical 3, but these were topped with 8-inch long talon-like claws, so I don't think having one less digit would have had much impact on their striking effectiveness. It has been estimated that they would have been about 7.5 meters or 25 feet long and weigh between 756 to 1,500 kilograms, or 1,667 to 3,307 pounds. For most of the Cretaceous period, North America was split in two by the Western Interior Seaway, which stretched in a north-south direction from the present-day Arctic Ocean all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. To the west was the continent of Laramidia, and it would be here that the Tyrannosaurids rose and the Tyrannosaurus rex dominated. The eastern continent, called Appalachia, was inaccessible to these tyrannosaurs due to the vast ocean that filled the Western Interior Seaway. But this did not mean that there were no apex predators for this landmass, and Dryptosaurus, a relative of those behemoths in the west, had Appalachia under its taloned grip. At this time, Appalachia would have been covered in forests, open woodlands, and coastal habitats. Sadly, compared to the Laramidia continent, there has been a lack of interest in Appalachia, and many of the fossils that have been found lie unstudied since the days of Cope and Marsh. We know that hadrosaurs are one of the dominant groups here, seemingly filling the niche that sauropods filled elsewhere, and it's likely that these hadrosaurs were a prominent part of Dryptosaurus's diet. With less research having been done about the ancient Appalachian continent and so few remains, we don't know for sure when or how Dryptosaurus went extinct. However, the late Cretaceous came crashing to an end around 66 million years ago with the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. It is now widely thought that the extinction event was caused by the impact of a massive asteroid, 10 to 15 kilometers or 6 to 9 miles wide. The Chicxulub crater in the Gulf of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula has been identified as a likely impact site, and this event caused the mass extinction of 3/4 of the plant and animal species on Earth at that time. The chances are that until Eish Krooked's Laelaps mod, you probably hadn't even heard of Dryptosaurus, but you may have seen this painting. Titled Leaping Laelaps, this watercolour was painted in 1897 by Charles R. Knight, and it is one of the earliest depictions of theropods as highly active and dynamic animals. Guided by Cope, Knight captured their progressive opinion on the agility of theropods despite their vast size. By comparison, typical illustrations of large carnivorous dinosaurs in the late 19th century depicted the animals as large, cumbersome, and slow. Despite being one of the most widely known dinosaurs at the time of its discovery, the Dryptosaurus has dropped out of public consciousness and is now largely unknown outside of academic circles. The Carcharodontosaurus finally joined the ARK creature roster in November 2022, bringing with it an unusual taming method and questions about whether or not it would steal the Giga's title of Ultimate Apex Predator. For this video, I'm using BigAL's Carcha Rework mod because I think the model looks better. But is the Carcha based on reality, or is it a work of fiction? Let's find out. In 1924, 2 teeth were unearthed in Algeria in North Africa. The teeth were handed over to the governor of the region, who in turn gave them to a French geologist, Charles Desparet. In 1925, the teeth were described as belonging to a new species of dinosaur, Megalosaurus saharicus. When it comes to the genus name Megalosaurus, well, this was what is known as a wastebasket taxon, and many new species were assigned to it without much justification. Another dinosaur I've covered, the Majungasaurus, spent some time assigned to this taxon too. The name Saharicus refers to the Sahara Desert, where the teeth had been found. The original teeth were eventually lost, but in the 1960s more discoveries were made in Algeria, consisting of teeth and several vertebrae. The sediments that the teeth were found in came from the late Cretaceous, and the Carcha would have been walking the earth about 100 million years ago. However, the teeth discovered in 1924 actually weren't the first Carcharodontosaurus fossils discovered. In 1914, in Egypt, a partial skull including much of the brain case, teeth and some vertebrae, an incomplete pelvis, a claw and some leg bones were discovered. They were collected for German paleontologist Ernst Stromer. At this time, Egypt was part of the British Empire, and the political tensions between Britain and Germany were running pretty high. It took years for the fossils to be allowed to leave Egypt and make their journey to Germany, and they finally arrived in Munich in 1922. They weren't formally examined and described until 1933. When they were described, Stromer recognised that the teeth of his specimen matched the characteristics of the ones that had been discovered in 1924, but having more of the skeleton, he found it necessary to erect a new genus for the creature, Carcharodontosaurus. The species name, Saharicus, was retained. Stromer chose the genus name Carcharodontosaurus because the teeth were similar to those of the great white shark, Carcharodontosaurus, and the translation of the dinosaur's genus name means jagged-toothed lizard. In 1939, World War II broke out, and Stromer's Carcha specimen was destroyed during a bombing raid on Munich during April 1944. An endocast of the fossil had been made, and that did survive, but that is the only remaining relic of the specimen. Over the next decades, few discoveries of Carcharodontosaurus were made until an incomplete skull was discovered in 1995 in southeastern Morocco. It was studied in 1996 and assigned to the genus. Since then, a number of other specimens have been discovered in the same area. In 2007, a new species of Carcharodontosaurus was described, Carcharodontosaurus iguidensis. This specimen was discovered in Niger. Whether or not it is a separate species of Carcha or whether it is actually a species of Spinosaurus remains up for debate, pending further discoveries and further research. Some researchers have suggested that the Carcha and the South American Giganotosaurus may be one and the same, but no further research has been done on this to date. It may seem bizarre today that two creatures from different sides of the Atlantic Ocean could be related or even the same, but Africa and South America were once connected and broke apart sometime during the Cretaceous period. Both of these dinosaurs do belong to the same family, the Carcharodontosauridae. The Carcha is one of the largest known theropod dinosaurs and terrestrial carnivores to have ever existed, being dwarfed only by Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, Giganotosaurus carolini, Tyrannosaurus rex, and Mappisaurus rosiae. The Carcha is thought to have been between 10 and 12.5 metres or 33 and 41 feet long and weighed in at between 4 and 7 tons. The skull alone was 1.6 metres or 5.2 feet long, about the same length as the largest Tyrannosaurus skulls. However, Carcha skulls tend to be more slender and lightly built. They had about 60 teeth, but these teeth were distinctly thin and blade-like and probably can sustain impact against hard surfaces such as bone. In addition to this, their estimated bite force was also lower than other giant carnivorous theropods, suggesting that they ate softer foods than their relatives, who were known for their high bite forces and jaws structured for crushing. Carcharodontosaurus, along with Allosaurus, had enlarged crests above their eyes. The purpose is unknown, but it has been hypothesized that these were used for headbutting between individuals. During the late Cretaceous, South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia and India formed a supercontinent known as Gondwana. North Africa, where the Carcharodontosaurus fossils have been found, bordered the Tethys Sea, and the area would have been a mangrove-dominated coastal environment filled with vast tidal flats and waterways. it's likely that the area experienced temporary monsoon seasons rather than constant rainfall, similar to the modern-day conditions in subtropical and tropical Southeast Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. The rivers were home to large fish, and as a result there was an abundance of crocodilian forms evolving. The range of the Carcharodontosaurus also overlaps with those of the Spinosaurus. The dinosaurs found in this area are unusual. There are fewer herbivorous dinosaur species compared to carnivorous species than you would normally find, which suggests that there was some niche partitioning, with Spinosaurids consuming fish while other carnivores hunted the few herbivorous species that were there. Towards the end of the late Cretaceous, the disappearance of the Carcharodontosaurids, Spinosaurids, and other megafauna in Gondwana and across the world suggests a global replacement event. A minor extinction event occurred around 90 million years ago, possibly as a result of the Gondwanan supercontinent breaking up into the continents that we are familiar with today. As it did, sea levels started to rise, leading to the loss of habitat and the demise of the ecosystem that supported the Carcharodontosaurus and its giant contemporaries. They disappeared from the fossil record at the same time as the Spinosaurids, so whatever occurred during this time had a widespread impact on the large dinosaurs that once inhabited this area. The Carcharodontosaurus is an iconic dinosaur in the ARK survival games, and offers an alternative to those who want to try something different to the Giga. The debate as to whether the Carcha or the Giga is better has rumbled on since the Carcha's arrival, so let me know in the comments which one you think is best. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to like it and don't forget to subscribe, but for now, I will see you in the ARK. Take care.